Welcome to the Cocktail Guru Podcast,
a show about food, drink, and entertainment,
with a tight focus on the good life,
and all things delicious, luxurious, and fun.
I'm Jonathan Pogash, bartender, author, TV personality, and founder of the Cocktail Guru.
And I'm Jeffrey Pogash, wine and spirits professional, author, insatiable collector of culinary ephemera, and so people tell me, an engaging raconteur.
And my dad. Oh, hey, Dad.
Hi, John. How are you today?
I'm well. It's so great to see you, and I'm very thankful that you are around. So that
still around, still alive and kicking. Yes, I'm still here. I'm still the one.
And that we're able to bring on some amazing guests and have some amazing cocktails. What are you drinking? You look like you have something fun.
I'm drinking something. It's a tribute to our next guest because this is one of the cocktails that he listed in his, I'm giving it away, but his bar manual. We'll talk about that later. And it is one of those cocktails, and it attracted me because it sounded so delicious, because I love all the ingredients. And it's a tribute also to our friends in that neck of the woods. It's called the Red Hook. The Red Hook. And I wanted to shout this out to our friends Lucinda and St. John in Red Hook. This is for you.
That's right. They have great spots there in Red Hook.
And
Seabourn
and Fort Defiance.
Seabourn and Fort Defiance. That's right. Do you want to? You wrote this really nice intro for our next guest. Do you want to start reading it? I don't know about. It's pretty. It's a nice long intro, Dad.
It is long. I don't know how nice it is, but it's long. I try to be nice, but it is. I just wanted to mention first that I'm excited about having this guest with us because he's someone I have read a great deal about. I have heard about him. I've read about him in a variety of publications and online, but I have never met this gentleman before. I must say that this episode is going to be like playing Where's Waldo, because I don't know where he is located. He is in exotic lands every day, it seems, from one Asian country to a South American country to a North American country. He's just literally all over the world. And I'm dizzy trying to keep up with him. I really am. He's a much sought after bar consultant. That's why he travels so much. He's recognized the world over because he has created bar programs in some faraway exotic locales that are among the most challenging markets in which to work, such as China, South Korea, and even New York. I should also add that those countries he has consulted for are some of the most demanding, or within those countries, he has consulted for some of the most demanding corporations in the world, including Disney, Four Seasons Hotels, Holland America Cruise Lines, Starbucks, Bulgari, the Magnificent Jewelry Company, and many, many more. If that were not enough, and I think it would be for me, if that were not enough, in 2016, our guest released a bar manual in which he compiled 178 modern classics to help young bartenders in their quest to learn some of the most important and requested drinks in the mixology universe. Best of all, he gave this list to the world, to everyone, without charge. He just gave it to us. Downloaded the list. I downloaded the list myself, and I'll be using it and learning from it forever. I'm speaking, of course, of bartender.
Hold on. We're going to bring him on. We're going to do this we're going to bring him on after this quick break.
There's nothing better than the smell of coffee in the morning. What if you could enjoy a coffee subscription of fresh, roasted specialty coffee while making a difference in the lives of the farmers that grow it? What if you also had access to a virtual coffee community of other coffee lovers and the coffee farmer and roaster? That's all part of the Farm to Cup Coffee Club subscription at Unleashed Coffee. Subscribe today. UnleashedCoffee.com.
And now we're back.
Back from the break. Good. I, of course, was speaking of bartender, consultant, mixologist extraordinaire, Mr. Chris Lowder.
Hello, welcome, Chris.
Chris.
Hey there. How are you guys?
Very well, Chris. How are you? Thank you.
Very well. Very well. I'm a couple coffees deep. I'm fired up. I'm ready to go.
You're
It's
ready
a
to
treat.
go, Chris Lowder, and Jonathan's ready, and I'm ready.
Since you're ready to go, Chris, we always ask our guests, what is your desert island drink?
Oh boy. I think if I'm on a desert island that sounds hot, so I would have to do a Queen's Park Swizzle. Sounds like
Ooh.
a really good time.
Oh, yeah.
If it's a new drink for you listening, that's kind of like an aged rum mojito with a whole bunch of bitters on top. It's a gift that keeps on giving. It's a good time to be.
It is a delicious drink. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that is one of your favorite drinks, Dad.
Yes, it is. Always has been.
Chris,
Already, that's exciting.
yeah, it's been a little while since we've seen each other, and you, as Dad was saying in his intro, you are all over the place. You started in New York City. You started in your home state, and then worked in New York City. Worked your way up, fine dining, and at one point you were tasked with a pretty large move across the country and across the Pacific Ocean. Is that not right?
That's right. So you're referring to, I was once the bar manager for a Nomad, a hotel in New York City called the Nomad.
Yep.
We did well for ourselves, sadly closed to COVID, et cetera, et cetera. But before that happened, I got a role opening a Four Seasons hotel in Seoul, South Korea. So I moved in, gosh, I have to remember, it must have been 2014, something like this, over to Seoul to open Four Seasons and take everything that I learned in New York and do it in Korea for a little while. That was a lot of fun.
And working in a foreign country like that, did you have any education on the language, on the style, or was it really just, fish out of water for you?
Oh boy. Well, so it's a weird story, as all good stories tend to be very weird. So once upon a time, I grew up cooking and washing dishes in a crab house in Maryland. That's kind of how I got into the industry when I was 15, as a dishwasher, and that was to make money to buy guitar equipment because I was in a punk rock band. So
Whoa.
that's really my entry into this world here.
Yes, it was Woody's Crab House.
Woody's Crab House, very, very good, absolutely.
That's right.
In Cecil County, Maryland. And so I needed a guitar, and a buddy of mine was like, well, they need a dishwasher down at the Crab House if you want to go and make a couple bucks scrubbing crab bisque off pots and pans. So I said, that's okay. And continued cooking to support myself when I went to university. And when I was in university, I didn't much care what I studied because I just wanted to play music. And there was a major called Asian Studies, it sounded super weird. And I figured, well, if this is just something I'm doing in between gigs for my band, then why not have fun with it and do something weird? So long story short, I got scholarship and I wound up living in China for a few years and eventually became a translator. So that was like a whole chapter. That was a whole chapter of my life I was a translator for industrial economics, and hated it. I mean, it's the language is fascinating. The culture is fascinating. It's the inbox outbox nature of translation that is a little grinding. And I said, gosh, I really miss my time in restaurants. And so that's originally why I moved to New York City and worked at Momofuku. So when I went to Korea, in some weird way, it was kind of a homecoming for me because I had already lived in China about 2.5 years at that point. From when I was 19, that's when I moved to Asia first. And I was there until I was about 22. And I'd never been to Korea, though. Don't get it twisted that if you know something about China, you know South Korea, right? These are very different cultures and languages. So, but I figured, hey, this is a step closer to the dream of taking what I learned in Asia and taking what I learned in New York and kind of mixing them all together. And so did that. And that was a whole learning experience for me, not just in terms of course, navigating a foreign country, having to do a visa process, having to, train Korean bartenders on the recipe style that we were aiming to achieve in that bar, which went on to be one of the 50 best bars of the world. But also, and it's called Charles H. You should Google it if you want. It's a beautiful bar, very worth checking out. It's had some incredible people there stewarding it since I did what I could, and it's very, very worth a Google. It's beautiful.
I love that name. I love the name Charles H. named for Charles H.
Charles
Baker.
H. Baker.
Well, you mentioned St. John earlier. We've got a lot of friends in common here.
Oh yeah.
Before I left, he gave me a copy of Charles H. South American Companion.
Yep.
And anyway, that's like a whole different story. But there's going there and doing what you do. But I think what was most interesting and fascinating for me as a professional in this space, and I think a lot of people listening are going to relate to this, is coming to a foreign country with one expectation of what bartending is and what service is and what that looks like, and then being very humbled by a local reality that, just because something works in New York, where we tend to, speaking on behalf of people in New York, we tend to believe that we're like the eye of the cultural storm of Earth.
Right.
Not the case. Right? Not the case. People don't need to care about anything that happens in New York. Like South Korea is a beautiful culture with beautiful traditions. And for me, the biggest lesson I think I learned from that whole journey was understanding that it's very difficult to really, as an outsider who is humbly touring, foreign spaces around the world, to project your expectations of what service, hospitality, and excellence should be onto a culture and context where that may not be appropriate. You know what I mean? So I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about.
What's an example? How did you navigate that?
So let's just talk about like water in a restaurant. Like let's start super baseline. So in Korea, in New York or in the States and in Europe, in kind of like service and hospitality as we tend to define it in the Western, European, American, Australian context, Anglo-European context, is heavily hands-on, right? Which is, I'm anticipating your demands before you see them. If I see that your water is half empty, I'm going to go top it up. I'm going to maybe engage in a little small talk at the table when appropriate and not intrusive. And that's kind of the back and forth. Even when we think behind the bar, right? There's a lot of people listening, I'm sure, who are bartenders or cocktail enthusiasts. And one of our favorite parts of sitting at a bar is small talk, discussion, chit chat, right? That's really how we can kind of define what makes a great bartender in a lot of cases, right?
Right.
Now, in Korea and in the Korean cultural context, that is heavily inverted. So if you go to a restaurant in Korea, there's a refrigerator to the side where they have beer, soju, and makgeolli, and that's the alcohol fridge. And when you want more bottles, like you just go over there and just grab them and take them back to your table. And a lot of the food is served family style. And the reason why is because a definition for hospitality in Korea might be, I'm here with my friends and I'm hosting. And part of my love language of hosting, part of how I show that I care, is to me at my table for my people anticipate their needs and cut the meat and cook the soup, or you know what I mean? Open the beers and all this. So you find yourself in a real quandary where, I'm excited because maybe this drifts into a topic of like awards and ranking bars and things internationally, which you'll see really quickly when you start to go down this rabbit hole becomes very problematic. Because you've got people visiting from overseas saying, there's a guy from the Nomad or whatever, I want to go and experience that bar. Whose cultural context do you define great service and hospitality in? Do you define it by the people who visit that bar? that are from foreign countries. Forbes 5-star checklist. Did my drink come with a serviette, or there, you know what I mean? There's all
Right.
these black and white binary ways to identify and evaluate what makes a quote unquote 5-star experience. Same as, if I'm a traveling bartender or brand representative and I go from London to Sri Lanka, right? Like, am I defining great service and hospitality and a great bar based on my own cultural context? Or am I defining it based on the
Western
area? Yeah,
culture.
I'm a guest,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And so you really quickly, if you, I think, are listening and being empathetic, you really quickly have to reevaluate what great service and hospitality means, so that you're not projecting one cultural standard into a space where it may not be appropriate. And that gets us into a real problem, right? Like, then
Right.
Sure.
Well, that's
how do you
very
define who's best?
that's very interesting. That's very interesting because, yeah, as American bartenders, as Western, well, I don't know about not really Europe, but American bartenders, we're always anticipating the next step for our guests. And if there's a guest with a little bit of their drink, their cocktail, like you were saying, water, a little bit of their cocktail next, you might go over and say, "Would you like another drink?" Or "Would you like to see the cocktail menu again?" But in Korea and Asia, it sounds like, the host would be in charge, and they're the ones who need to anticipate. So, my question also is, how does that translate to when you're training bartenders there? How are you, are you training them? Is it like a 50-50 blend? Is it a happy medium? Is it, you need to take the cue off of the host?
That's a really great question. And it becomes something where I see it done well, and I see it done in a way that can be a little clumsy. And this comes from just to frame where I'm coming from in this discussion, after South Korea, I wound up joining a group called Proof and Company, which is one of the most decorated bar consultancies on earth, and especially in the Asian context, right? And so we had offices in Singapore, regional Asia, servicing to Thailand, Kuala Lumpur, you know what I mean? Maldives. I was running Greater China, and so doing lots and lots of bar trainings. I mean, I've been grateful enough to probably train over 10,000 people in different seminars and settings. And you go to one city and 120, 150 bartenders will show up just to learn. And this is like a quote unquote tier 3 city in China. They're just enormous, right? So you get a lot of reps in, you get a lot of practice having these discussions. And I think over time, if you're sensitive, can better navigate these discussions. But initially, so I'll frame this answer as part of my own story. Like, initially, I really got it wrong, which is, I was training that bar on a purely Western, this Anglo-American standard for service and excellence, which is, we're heavily watering, we're going, if the cocktail is down to the last dregs, we go and we offer another one, or we drop a menu. And initially, the staff there, because it's also quite a hierarchical culture, and I was like, the leader in that situation, I could sense that there was a little discomfort, but I originally wrote it off to shyness or a cultural misunderstanding or something like that. Later, when I saw it in action by being in that bar every day, I quickly realized that I was doing, I think, the wrong thing, because we were pissing off our guests. We were going in trying to water people, and I would see guests get animated, like visibly frustrated of, I'm in the middle of a moment with my guest here. We're sitting here. I don't understand why you're interrupting me. I don't understand why you're coming here at all. The Korean, and in China, you get into this. And even in Japan, usually you have a button. Sometimes you call it the ping pong button, because it makes a little ping pong sound like out in the back. And so you hit a button, and then there's like a area of servers way off in the distance, and they'll go, ah, like just to, like, I hear you, you know what I mean? I'm coming. Or in China, you'd yell, or in Korea, you put your hand up and you go, Imonim, like auntie, or in China, Fuyuan, like server, and you kind of holler and shoo somebody over. And that's not seen as rude, right? It's seen as you're the server and you're over there for when I'm ready to be served. And when I'm ready to be served, I'm going to call you over to me. And so initially, like coming from a fine dining background in the States, when I saw people putting their hands up to bring servers over, I was like appalled, like, oh my God, we're failing these people. You know what I mean? Because we have not anticipated their needs. They feel the need to put their hand up and rush us over. Later, I just, it's part of being humbled. It's part of experiencing that over and over again and saying, I'm wrong, right? I'm humbled now that I can look at this and be like, it's me, I'm the problem, right? and so that really changes
to quote Taylor Swift.
Quote Taylor Swift, for all you Swiftie/cocktail wonk overlap out there. It's me, I'm the problem. And I can identify that, okay. So that having been said, it's not inappropriate to alert people in an international hotel that when you have Western guests coming in, they're going to have a totally different service expectation. And so eventually we met somewhere in the middle of, look, we are a Four Seasons hotel. We are international. And I've gone on to do lots of trainings at, Aman's, Capella's, Bellagio, Bulgari, Four Seasons, you name it. And that's really the tact that I wound up going with was, look, this is an international brand. You are going to have international guests. You're going to have club members that come in from overseas. They're going to expect this one whole set of hospitality and service standards. But then you also have your own cultural context, which to ignore is deeply arrogant and problematic. Like, I'm not going to come into China and tell Chinese people how to treat other Chinese people. That's insane. So, but I say insane, but you'd be amazed how often you see it done, right? Is just, no. Like, this is service.
Yeah.
Or I was on a call just last week with someone who was, quote unquote, trying to get into consulting and was like, I was just in Thailand and the service was awful. I was like, dude, the service wasn't awful. The service was awful in your cultural context. Like, if you were Thai, they crushed it. You know what I mean? Because they gave you, they conform to your expectation of what a great meal experience might be, right? So you get into, the farther you tease into this rabbit hole, you get into problems with international rankings of spaces. And you're like, by whose cultural context are we saying that something is the best? And that's like a whole viper's nest of ethical and cultural problems,
Right. Well, we have so much more to talk about, including your book. And I want to touch on something else about education and about TikTok, but we're going to take a quick break and be right back.
Hey everyone, Jonathan here. If you're into swag as much as we are, then look no further than our Cocktail Guru shop. The items in our store have been personally chosen, handpicked with care by me, I'm Jonathan, and my team of Cocktail Gurus. A water bottle with a stainless steel straw? Yep. T-shirts? Hoodies? Snapback hats? Signed copies of Mr. Boston Bartender's Guide? Cocktail box kits? Bar tools? And more! You betcha! We've even managed to create a onesie for that mocktail lover in your family. So head on over to shop.thecocktailguru.com and use code GURU23 for 10% off your first order. Great deal. That's shop.thecocktailguru.com, 10% off with code GURU23. Cheers.
And we're back with Mr. Chris Lowder. And Chris, you came into my radar when you were, I believe, working in New York City and working at Nomad. But really, when I noticed that you spent a great deal of time on educational materials for bartenders, for consultants, that you made public for anyone to grab and utilize. And I need to tell you that since you put that out there, which was probably around 2014, something like that, I use many of your quotes in my bar consulting trainings, including one of my favorite, which is your description of an apple martini.
Yes, absolutely. And for anyone listening, that's and this I think comes from my. Let's talk about apple martinis for 1 second, and then I'll chat about I think what the core question here is. When you get into a bar, and all around the world, I find that in the beverage profession and in the service industry, sometimes we can have a very egocentric view of what things mean. By definition, like someone comes in and orders an apple martini, we might say, we don't make those, or I don't have apple pucker, or whatever, right? But the problem is that they're defining apple martini, like they have a story in their head of what an apple martini is. And it probably does not involve a specific recipe. It probably is, I want something that looks like a martini that tastes like apples and is delicious, right?
And
Now,
maybe is green. Maybe.
And maybe it's green. Absolutely. Like, can you do that? Right.
Right.
And so oftentimes there's a interpretation gap between what a guest is thinking and the story in their head, and what a bartender's thinking and the story in their head. And ironically, as service professionals and as hospitality professionals, like we should be in the business of empathy and thinking with a position of generosity. I don't know anything about this person probably that just came to my bar, except that they're here. So already we've got something in common. I work here, you're here. You want to spend money on my craft, right?
Yeah,
That's a compliment. Like, let's start there. By virtue of the fact that you're both in the same space, you share interests. You share an interest in cocktails. They're complimenting you based on, I understand that you do this craft, and I want to invest in what you do and experience it, right? So, wow, first of all. Secondly, they're saying what? They're saying that they want apples. Okay, can you fulfill that? I think so. If you're really good at what you do, then you should have some apple-y thing in your back pocket. Can you meet in the middle, like between your world and their world, in a way that everyone's happy at the end of the day? Absolutely. So that's my little mini rant. That's I think a rehashing of my rant that's in my book. But yeah, I made it all public. That's the right thing to do. I think that for a number of reasons. Firstly, I think that bartending is an extremely powerful, and service in general is an extremely powerful vocation that people can practice all around the world to put food on the table for themselves and their families, to improve in small ways that are meaningful the lived experience of guests who choose to spend their time with them. And I think that should be accessible, right? To try and gatekeep these fundamental pieces of information, for me, is unethical. And I think that if you are going to anyway, to become a great bartender has nothing to do with recipes. It has nothing to do with costing out a cocktail. It has nothing to do with knowing the recipe for a syrup or an infusion or a specific drink. It's all in the execution. So to give away details that are frankly already Googleable, like we're drowning in data, we're starving for wisdom, right? That's our culture right now in a nutshell. So like to give people just a better organized piece of data with a couple pieces of hopefully useful wisdom in there, I think is hopefully it just is furthering the good. And if a couple people can take that manual and use it to improve their lives and some people around them, then that's a good way to spend some time, in my opinion.
And
Now,
that's your book, the 178 cocktails. It's in some of that is in there.
That's right. So it's, if anyone wants that, just check me out on Instagram or TikTok. I'm on both at Get Lowder Now, GETLOWDERNOW. And I have a link tree that it's a free download. It's not behind a paywall. It's not behind an email capture wall. I don't want your information. It's literally like you click the link and you can download the PDF and you never have to hear my face again. You know what I mean?
And if I can do it, anybody can do it.
If you could tell,
Hey.
Dad is showing us his tablet where he has downloaded the
This is
PDF.
Lowder's easy list of 178, in parentheses, modern classics to know. And it's from 2016.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
And that's
it's beautiful.
the book in a nutshell. Thank you. If anyone wants to read it, I wrote it in just casual conversational dialogue. I tried to not make it too cerebral. The exercise is for this information to be accessible, and it's every major spirit category, 3 shaken cocktails, 3 stirred cocktails that I think are really good. I'm not claiming authorship of any recipe in the book. This is things that I've learned on my journey, having tested many recipes. These are the ones I feel like are just consistently great. And it's got my little 2 cents at the beginning of every section about that.
Now, I know many of these are classics, but are they your versions of classics? Is that you have tweaked them a little bit over the years?
Right. That's a great question. So I am a very nerdy, A/B testing, science-driven dweeb when it comes to recipes and their development. So my own journey around recipes when I first started in the industry was I got the PDT cocktail book was, I think, the first big one for me after reading lots and lots of blogs. And, I, of course, got Joy of Mixology and Dale Hoff's book and all this stuff, The Craft of the Cocktail.
And maybe the Mr. Boston Bartender's Guide edited by me, Jonathan Pogash.
Boom. I do have a Mr. Boston, and I did buy it at that time, 100%. And those are all extraordinarily useful books, especially if you read the Pogash foreword. That's probably the most useful piece of cocktail literature that one can read. When I saw that PDT book, and I'm saying this looking at a copy of Meehan's Bartender Manual. The PDT book, what I very quickly realized is that all the recipes in there pre-1970 are pretty solid specs, right? They're pretty solid specs for classics. Anything after 1970, 1980 mark, especially like the PDT indigenous recipes, it got a lot into like, cheeky infusions and interesting syrups and stuff that's cool to read, but
complicated.
And it's not really like from the perspective of someone just getting into their bartending journey, you don't need to make popcorn infused rum, right? Like you just don't need that when you're first starting. Right. What you need is to learn the fundamental building blocks of the science of quote unquote mixology as it's been developed. So I started there, and one of my favorite positions at the Nomad Hotel was service bar, because it's a concealed service bar where you don't have to talk to a single guest, and all you're doing is pumping out rounds of 8 cocktails at a time all night, every night. And you're making like 400 plus drinks a night in a little box that's just surrounded by walls with a curtain in front of you, and you're just vibing, right? You're in a flow state. So what I would do is I started with PDT, and then I turned those recipes into flashcards, and I had my book, my little notebook. And then I'm a big recipe collector, and I had friends at Death & Co. before their recipes all got published. And I was also working at a couple places in the East Village, Amoria Margot, and I had some friends at I gotta remember some of these great bars that just sadly don't exist anymore, but they were doing amazing work, like Tom Richter and Joaquin Simo and some of these guys that I think are some of the best recipe writers ever. I just would ask them, could you please share with me your spec list? And so I started reading all those. A friend of mine gave me the Madrusan Milk and Honey Classics. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it's an epic Excel of every variation of every classic.
Oh, wow. I don't think I've seen that.
I've got it in a drive. I'll share it.
Sure.
It's in my I believe it's in. I have a Google Drive called the Bar Collective, and that's my big drive that I made public for just anyone who wants this stuff. Because what I realized at the end of the day is that everyone's freely sharing it underground. So just make that a little more accessible. That was the whole mission.
And Chris, I wanted to bring something up before we wrap up the episode, because it's just flown by and there's so much more that we can talk about. Before there was Chris Lowder, the TikTok sensation, there was another social media sensation, and she goes by the name of Janae, a young woman hired by Spirit Brands to make online videos. And she is, if you guys look her up, all you need to type in is Janae Old Fashioned. And she is known for her heavy hand and her sort of matter of fact, laissez-faire cocktails. I have a cocktail in front of me in her honor.
Wow.
I am holding a pint full of whiskey, basically, with a little bit of ice in it. I don't have the bright red maraschino cherry, but Chris, how? So TikTok is insane, and we do the Cocktail Guru. We do have a TikTok page. It's called the Cocktail Guru Team. But how did you get into that, and how did you meet, or how did you, vibe with Janae and her videos? Because what you started doing was what's called a duet, where the top part of the screen is Janae making her drink, and then you're on the bottom commenting on it as she's making it. And you have had tens of thousands of views and likes and downloads and all of this stuff. And it really probably has kind of changed this moment of your life.
Yes, certainly. So it's really funny. This is like a 6-hour topic. It's actually way deeper than it seems at surface level. The surface level is I've got my TikTok channel where I do a few things. One of which is talk about the business of consulting, bar building, and restaurant building. One of which is do share some of my travels around the world as I experience different spirits. I was just in Jalisco for agave harvest, and before that was in Northeast Italy to do a deep dive.
That was a trip. That was the trip I was supposed to go on with you.
I'm bummed to have missed you.
I know.
But let's go back because it was really cool.
Yeah.
And so I share some of that, and then the other thing, which is my personal favorite, is I love a really good, bad 10-plus-year-old cocktail tutorial video. And the reason that I love a good, bad video is not to take a shot at people learning the craft, because I would never besmirch someone that's just trying to make their way in this world. What I love is the sensation that is early proto YouTube. I love also sometimes the misguided nature of a brand video that has wholly gone awry. And so Janae, in her videos, basically, I actually did an hour-long interview with Janae last week, and we're going to post it to the channel slowly. But it was live. 10,000 people tuned into the live, which is so much fun. And so there's 180,000 followers for this content right now that just watch for the duets, which is so much fun. My top one of Janae's Old Fashioned is cresting 3 million views right now. So,
jeez, wow. Oh my goodness.
Pretty epic. And the reason why it so many people love that content is because of the insane nature of the videos. So what we learned from chatting with Janae is she's there, a bartender / actor in LA / Sacramento. A group approaches her and says, do you want to cast for a thing called LA's Hottest Bartender? No context about what that is. So she says yes and does a little video. And then they say, great, you've got the gig. And on Tuesday, come in and we're going to have a car pick you up, but you got to drive out. So drive out. We're going to meet at 8 a.m. in a creepy 1-story building, not a professional lot, an office building that's like carpeted. It's empty. There's nobody there. There's 2 guys that bring her in. She doesn't know what she's doing at this point. She's just an actor, right? She comes in. She had closed the restaurant the night before, so she's on 4 hours sleep, does her hair, puts on a dress, goes to this creepy building. There's 2 guys. You go into a carpeted office building where there's 1 bag of ice, no jiggers, and an Excel printout. Who knows where they got it, of 100 recipes to do day 1 and 100 recipes to do day 2. 1 bag of ice in a ice machine bucket, so it's
God.
melting constantly,
Right.
and 1 dump bucket. And whenever they would run out of an ingredient, they would just move to the next ingredient. So there's no stakeholder in this situation. Janae's there for a paycheck. The cameraman has no idea what they're doing. They've just been hired. The people organizing the video shoot aren't present because it turns out that the video shoot is just trying to make aggregate content for a YouTube service called mahalo.com that was trying to like rival Google and failed. So no one cares. Their whole idea was we're going to put as much content as possible onto YouTube, teaching people different skills, but never thought that the content should be good, right? So what's so weird, it's like this kabuki level insane theater that you're watching is you have Janae, the actor, who's there trying to hold it together and pretend like nothing's wrong. The set, which is insane because it's put together by this cameraman that's hired on a day rate. The recipes are insane because they're just some random printout that no one has ever had these drinks before. A drink called like a Ghostbuster or a Buzz Lightyear, and insane. And then she's following the script, but the actions that she's doing and the ingredients don't match the words that she's saying. And the post-video edit also don't match. So all the details are wrong. They misspell her name they spell her name a different way in almost every video because it's such poor attention to detail. And she never tastes the drink because she knows in her mind, A, it's 9 a.m. B, it's ice I'm straining with my hand into a garbage can.
That's right.
To reuse
She's
the ice.
literally straining with her hand.
Yes. So it's almost like if you've ever seen The Room by Tommy Wiseau, which is like the worst movie that's ever been made and has a whole cult following in and of itself, because there's the movie at face value, which is a terrible movie. But then there's the meta value of the more you tease at these details, the funnier and funnier and funnier they get, right? And so that there's this whole community now that I'm weirdly the center of, together with Janae, who I asked her, like, do you regret doing these videos? She was like, actually, the one thing I regret is when they first became a Facebook meme in like 2012. I wish I would have used that to transition into a career in comedic acting, because that's always been her passion. And so since these videos blew up, and they're big on TikTok, and now she's like re-viral again, she's been contacted by people that are actually making like serious film to do comedy. And so
that's great, because I think I wonder if I'm pretty sure a lot of it is because of what you've been doing with her, because what has happened, from about 2012, when those a few years after she did them, it would keep coming up. People would keep posting her videos, and it was people saying how shameful it was, and how awful this technique is, and it was blasting her. And I'm sure in her mind, she's like, I feel so ashamed. Why? I don't want to let anybody know who I am or where I am. But what you've done, Chris, is you've brought comedy to it, and your point of view, your sense of humor, by doing the duet. And she'll be doing something, and then you'll say something like, "Oh no, Janae, come on, don't you do that?" But you have such an endearing quality when you're doing it. It's not judgmental. It's extremely non-judgmental. It's
just to quote what she told me in our interview, she said, it's exactly what you had mentioned, is the YouTube comments on some of the stuff is really toxic, right? And the Facebook, I think that's the nature of like circa 2012, 2014 Facebook. And I think why a lot of people got turned off from that platform is that there is this kind of like fairly toxic message board culture and a lot of finger pointing, and it's easy to have this kind of negativity. And what's been fun is if you watch the TikTok videos and all of these have like 10,000 plus comments, right? And all of the comments are just people making lighthearted jokes, but not in a way that's like, this person's a knucklehead, but more in a way that's just kind of having fun with the character of Janae, like othering that. Like there's Janae, the real person, but then there's this insane character doing this insane thing. And always my perspective when I watch these videos is to just approach them at face value with a energy of generosity. Like every video, I just reset of like, oh, it's Janae. Like, I'm excited for a new recipe. And then it quickly goes haywire and you're like, no, you know
exactly.
what I mean?
Yeah, I love it. But Chris, before we let you go, because we are running out of time here, I wanted to just ask you one final question. Maybe you have the answer for it or the answer to it, and maybe you don't. What is the trick to TikTok and going viral?
Oh boy, the trick to TikTok and going viral, the trick to any social media right now is don't make it about you. If you can check your ego, if you can resist the urge to just center yourself, and I know that sounds kind of ironic because it's like your social media page, but if you shift from I'm here to talk about myself to I'm here to provide value to you, then you actually totally change the audience dynamic. And I think what everyone listening to this, I don't care if you're a bartender, a professional, you have no skin in the game, but you just want to grow your own thing. Anyone listening to this, think about your social media channel as a magazine for people who share your interest. So imagine if you put up a post that is just interviewing, like it's just a Humans of New York style interview of somebody in your space that you think is awesome. If you were to take the time to do that and shine a light on other people in a way that delivers value and tells the story of the interests, the shared interests of the people that you want to communicate with, you will crush it. A great example, right, is this new AI widget came out that everyone is posting AI versions of their own selfies. Guys, you've missed the point. Like AI is this society-changing technology. Like, how about do a little video about, hey, here's how you can use AI to solve a problem or something like that. But no one's doing that. Everyone's just using AI to post a fancier selfie of themselves. And it's no wonder that they're not going viral or getting the traction they want, because the content is so self-involved and it's not actually delivering value to the people looking at it.
Right. I think it comes full circle with you, Chris, that, something that you touched on earlier is empathy, and be empathetic. That's really what it sounds like it's all about.
It's the hardest thing to remember.
Words of wisdom from a very wise man, Chris Lowder.
The empathetic bartender.
Yeah. I'll say even a broken clock is right twice a day. That's a little bit more accurate.
I love it. I love it. And we'll leave it at that. Chris, you've been an amazing guest. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for your time, gentlemen. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Chris. Great to see you. Tipple Time is brought to you in part by Perfect Purée of Napa Valley.
Hey, Jonathan here again. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Cocktail Guru podcast, and it's just about over this episode, but we've got this extra special content that we've been doing every week called Tipple Time, where I make you a little cocktail. And I am who's into sangria out there? Raise your hands. Yes, sangria, red sangria, white sangria. One of my pet peeves is just the amount of ingredients that go into a red sangria or a white sangria. And I am all about ease of preparation, making things ahead of time. And that's why what I'm going to showcase for you today is actually a product from the Perfect Purée of Napa Valley. It's their red sangria, which is a blend of different types of juices, passion fruit, pear, strawberry, and it works so well either in a white or a red sangria. Now, it is called red sangria, but you can add white wine to it. It will still be red in color. And what I'm going to do is just kind of go through a little taste of the actual product itself and then add some wine to it, and let's see how it tastes. So, first of all, this color, if you can't see it, it's a really nice, definitely a red wine color, like a cloudy red wine. And the nose, you get this tropical note, passion fruit, definitely some passion fruit. I smell the strawberry. Let me just give it a taste. It's got a perfect mix of tartness and sweetness, which I like, and a little bit of astringency, kind of like wine. So I can tell that this will work really well with the tasting notes of wine. And if you're working in a bar or restaurant, what I love is you can use wine that's about to turn, and you can add it to a big batch, and this is great. You can pre-make it ahead of time. Now I've got a little bit of white port here, which I love in sangrias, and I'm just going to add some white port to my wine glass here, and then a little bit more red sangria mix. And I'm going to give it a little taste. Oh yeah, I get that port in the nose, which is really nice. You know, a little bit of, grape and lychee and pear. Oh yeah, it just goes down really easily, guys. And you could serve it over ice. You could even serve it room temperature. You batch it ahead of time, or you stick it in the fridge, and then you take it out when you're having a little party, a little get-together, a little gathering. This is a really great red sangria made with the perfect puree of Napa Valley. And be creative. That's really what I'm about. That's what they're all about as well. Red wine, white wine. You can add spirit to it. Rum, even whiskey, gin, vodka, tequila, mezcal. The possibilities are endless, and that's really what I love about making cocktails and about mixology in general. And hopefully you've enjoyed this little segment we call Tipple Time. And until next time, keep experimenting, everyone. Cheers.
Tipple Time is brought to you in part by Perfect Puree of Napa Valley. On the next Cocktail Guru podcast, I see that one of your cocktails was inspired by the Beatles.
Huge fan of Boulevardiers. So Abbey Road, Boulevard, Strawberry Fields, you know, we get kind of witty in our titles too.
Yeah, Strawberry Fields. Ice cubes. How could we forget ice cubes?
Can't forget ice.
On the next Cocktail Guru podcast. That does it for today's show. If you enjoy what we do, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also support the show with a small monthly donation to help sustain future episodes. Just click on the donate button at the top of our website and choose your donation amount. To learn more about our guests, visit www.thecocktailgurupodcast.com or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok.
The Cocktail Guru podcast is produced by First Reel Entertainment and distributed by EatsDrinksTV, a service of the Center for Culinary Culture, home of the Cocktail Collection, and is available via Anchor, Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, and wherever you listen to your favorite shows.